welcome back to the Frontend Coffee Break. This is episode 22 already. Oh my goodness. This is great. Chucho Castañeda, how are you, man?
Hello. Well, I'm happy. The weather is starting to cool off a little bit, which is nice. And other than that, enjoying as always a nice of decaf today.
I'm not enjoying anything. Actually, I'm hating myself and hating login forms and accessibility and how Chrome autoprofills inputs.
It's nice when you try to fill something and then it puts your credit card number there. It's like, no, that's not where it goes.
Back in the days when we started with this HTML, usually the login forms were just, it's a form tag. You have an input text, an input password, input submit, or just a button submit, right? But nowadays, these designers, man, they start doing like multi-step things. And then I have this use case where the user is typing, and as they type, we change from different types of like input text. Maybe it's a number, maybe it's a username, maybe it's an email. And of course, it doesn't work very well everywhere. And I'm like, okay, I need to take a break, go to the Frontend Coffee Break, and start recording. Yeah.
Well, hopefully after this episode, you'll be more senful.
Hopefully. All right. So as you probably already saw, guys, the title for today is AI tools, how to use them. We don't want this to become yet another post or yet another podcast on AI. So we want to give you insight on how we do it, how we use it. And then you guys, please share with us how you do it, right? And if you have any tips, tricks, or any other tools we don't use, as usual. Right. So I think, Tucci, you want to deep dive into the history of AI or how it began?
Yes, but this is not like telling back, as you said. We want to share our experience with the AI topic. There's fantastic material out there if you want to really learn about AI tools, how to best use them and such. But this is more of how the impact it has had on our work. And first of all, as I wanted to talk with the how it began in our company, what was the first time that it was mentioned and how it evolved. The first time I looked for it in our Slack history, and I found out that the first message came back from 2021, if I'm not mistaken, June 30th of 2021. And it was shared in the channel. Hey, I don't know how I came to with this news, because it was me. I was surprised that it's like, I shared, hey, have you heard about this thing called Copilot? Has anyone tried it? It's interesting. I don't know if someone else had mentioned it before, but the thing is that back then, that's when I said, hey, what do you think about it?
But that was 2 years ago already, right?
Yes, 2 years ago already. And I think I started using it a little bit after that. I signed up because you need to sign up to get the access and such. Mm-hmm. I did, and eventually I got the access and started using it since then. But it was interesting, the discussion that happened at that moment. People were saying, "Oh, it seems that it's just a glorified, in a way, autocomplete." And for me, actually, that was like a selling point. It wasn't a con; it was a pro. It's like, "Oh, yeah, I'm up for it," because for me, one of the biggest issues in working with the front end, working with CSS, not TypeScript, but working with CSS, is the lack of autocomplete. That you see in IntelliSense in when you're working with Java, for example. So it does. I think that the first parts of the discussion ran around that.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I think we all began installing plugins back in the day with VS Code or Atom or things like that, where you wanted to actually autocomplete more than the browser knew, right? Because you define const Chucho, doesn't know if it's a string, array, object, and they cannot autocomplete you with the different properties or methods. But as soon as you have imports and exports and all those things, it starts to be more smart. And I think that's one of the things I really liked about VS Code and how it integrates with TypeScript. And then suddenly, if it knows it's an array, it will give you array map, array filter, all those things. It's really, really good.
I just wish that, for example, this was part of a natural part of the VS Code, of the tool,
maybe it will
the
be.
IDE.
I mean, once the AIs are so standard that you don't have to pay extra for it, maybe it's just a plugin, you turn it on and that's it.
the powered, your local powered AI. But it began like that. People were sharing just how it worked out as autocomplete, and then eventually, I don't remember who, but they mentioned, hey, I remember the ones people saying, well, do you think this will take our jobs away? And eventually someone said, nope, it's not going to take our jobs, because I tried this and it didn't work out that nicely. And I remember there was this one post that said, whoa, stop the press, because I just asked him to do this, and this was the output, and it was good.
Yeah, I mean, surely. I mean, we have not all have like examples either with Copilot, either with ChatGPT, or any other AI tool that where you ask something, it returns you the perfect answer. And of course, if you were somebody who made a living out of answering that question, then you're out of work. But for us, let's talk a little more later on this. But I'm not super afraid at this moment.
Nice. And that was regarding ChatGPT and the ChatGPT, sorry, Copilot, which was nice. I eventually ended up getting a license, and we've discussed about if it would become eventually some sort of internal policy to have the company help us pay this, because it made that work. At least I think it made it work better. But well, that's a subject for another topic. And one of the first things, of course, you install the plugin in VS Code, and that's how you start working with it. But it's not the only plugin that you have, right? So right now you're working with one that I realized that I had installed but never used, which was the...
Yeah, exactly. So for my setup for GitHub Copilot would be 3 plugins. The main one, of course, Copilot. Then you have Copilot Chat, which actually gives you the regular chat on your editor. So you don't have to leave to go to ChatGPT or Bart or whatever. You just are in there. And the other one is called Labs, which is more like cutting edge, nightly builds, whatever, to try stuff. They do experiments like you can select a piece of code and say, please document it for me, and you will add documentation, or check these lines, is there any defect or any way to make it more clean? And you will do those things. I don't do it as much. What I'm using mostly is the chat.
Okay.
And the superpowers when it comes to autocomplete. Yeah. What about you?
Well, I'm more of an autocomplete guy as well. And the Copilot, it's usually just like, I love it that it's so smart that, especially when you're repeating patterns, smart. When you're repeating patterns, which is what it's good for, and you're trying to add code that it's very similar to what you've added, or for example, you start adding a couple of values that you want to test, and it immediately autocompletes. I was working on for example, a airline-related code, and I wanted to add the airport code and the name of the airport. So I started to create a chunk of data, and when I started the second one, I just typed, for example, the name Barcelona, and immediately it auto-completed.
Oh, everything else.
Yeah. The code, the airport code, the geolocation, the coordinates.
Oh, wow.
And it was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So that's the main function that the autocomplete, as you say. And then sometimes, especially when it's, I am not ashamed of saying that, when it's related to regular expression.
So when you mean like you don't code your regular expressions by hand? You don't handcraft them anymore?
No anymore. I've never, simple ones, yes, but then I use this online tool sometimes to try to. It's always been a nightmare.
Yeah.
It's not my thing. So I think that this is one of the things that I've done the most. Like, write a regular expression that does this.
So how do you trust that regular expression? Like, how do you
testing
know
it
that
afterwards?
Sure. I mean, sure. But do you know, if you don't know anything about regex, do you know it's performant? Do you know it's doing maybe too many lookups? How do you know that the code that GitHub Copilot is giving you is good enough for your standards?
You don't, unless you know what you're doing. That's true. I mean, that is the biggest danger in AI generated tools. And this happened to me, for example, not with AI necessarily, but Copilot, if I'm not mistaken, and one of the big things that it had, the big controversies, was that it was trained with code and that was shared in GitHub. And I don't know if it used Stack Overflow. I think it did. At one point, I remember sharing the news that Stack Overflow was blocking Copilot or something to look at the things that were shared there. In any case, I've seen, for example, people using Stack Overflow itself to post a solution of work when I was reviewing a pull request and seeing, hey, it looks perfect, but this little piece of code, what does it do? And they told me
they don't know. Right? It's copy and paste.
Yeah. Yes, and that's the big danger. I mean, it happens even without AI.
Right.
So
right.
with it, the only thing that AI does is that it makes it more efficient,
faster.
Bad code faster.
It's a fast copy and paste. Yeah. I mean, again, I'm with you with the whole autocomplete. Not only when I'm writing my JavaScript, but I've noticed a lot of performance boost when I'm writing end-to-end testing with Cypress, that's a framework. Because I'm already everything is so descriptive. Like I have my object, have my selector, right? Selector, header, selector, button, selector something. And then, of course, when you write an end-to-end test with Cypress, you got to start doing it, open parentheses, and then write, the button or the header expects to be this value. And then because it's so descriptive, when I do like line break, it automatically will pick up my selector from the variable. It will automatically do, the shoot and the assertion of Cypress that you don't know about, and it's so fast. I'm really surprised how good it is, honestly.
Yeah. That's one of the other uses that I do. I'm not a big fan of unit testing. I've never been a big fan of unit testing. I think it's necessary for certain things, but not for everything. But when we're asked to cover everything, it's like, okay, let's try to cover everything. And sometimes I do get Copilot to help me out on that one. And then, as you said, the important thing is that it gets me started. I say, okay, I need this testing, take this code, test it. And then I go through the answer they gave me, try to understand it, and make sure that it's actually testing as it should be testing.
Yeah, so I think we gotta highlight or like underline you gotta know what you're doing, right? I mean,
yes,
sure. Productivity boost, it's fantastic. I pay 10 euros or 20 if it's like premium, like a business account, whatever for GitHub. Totally worth it if it saves you an hour a week or 2 hours a week or whatever it is. So definitely worth it. But you gotta know the output. You gotta learn. Okay, it's giving me this. I understand what it's doing, and not just do the old copy and paste. So as long as that's something you do, that's fine. What I like about the chat, not only autocomplete, it's like it will be very like context aware. So I will have my maybe 2 or 3 files open in my Visual Code, and then I will ask a question without context, and then it will know that I'm talking about maybe Cypress or end-to-end testing. Maybe I have one Cypress file open, one spec file, and I will write something, and then on the chat I'll say, this should be that, or how do I check this thing? And I don't have to tell it. For Cypress, how do I make an assertion that will... No. I mean, I can be more like vague or lazy on my prompt, and it will know because of the files open, which is fantastic.
And this is a tip that you told me that I didn't know, and I am eager to try anything that makes the work easier. And now, regarding the cost, because that's I guess one of the things that's not controversial, but I think you have to take into account how much does it cost in general. For us as developers, it's around, I think, the license, 10 euros and dollars.
10 if it's personal, right? But if you do like organization, like business, SSO type of thing, I think it's 20 euros a month.
Okay.
Or dollars a month for Copilot. But we're talking about money. I was reading this Wall Street Journal blog post. I have the name here. What is it? I lost it now. Where is it? Well, anyway, what's the journal? They were talking about the hype of AI and the cost of it. And they were mentioning that people close to the numbers on GitHub, they were saying that the individual cost of GitHub Copilot was close to $80. Like in terms of like making it run servers and all those things, right? While you're paying 10, which is an indication of what's going to happen in the future. Once the critical mass is using Copilot or whatever, they're going to say, hey, it's no longer 20, now it's 100, right?
Oof. That's a little bit scary. I mean, it is a typical thing that they do, that they undersell it. Would that be the term? But that they basically make you pay less than it's really costing them.
Yeah, but for everything, no? It's like when they give you a first discount if you sign up for a service, and it's first months for free. Now Copilot is like maybe 2 years for almost nothing, and now they're going to charge for it. I found the title, if you guys want to read about it, it's Big Tech Struggles to Turn AI Hype into Profits. It's worth the read. Interesting stuff.
I think in this case, we can presume that the cost has to go down. Definitely has to go down, because otherwise, as you said, it's not going to be maintainable. And code-wise, maybe specifically if, for example, this is AI. If I'm not mistaken, this is general AI. It's not necessarily Copilot.
No, the article is general, yeah.
So this includes writing, proofreading, if we could say, and generating content and generating a lot of these other things. So that's why it's that expensive. Maybe for if it's only coding, maybe it would be a little bit or quite a bit less. And eventually, with the faster computers and such, the costs should go down.
Yeah, but it's an interesting question to know. I mean, how much do you produce more with paying 100 euros for Copilot a month? Is it really worth it? It's very hard. It depends on where you are, how much you bill to the clients, how much you make every month. But easily, 10 euros is a no-brainer. 20 euros is probably a no-brainer if you're using it for work. For pleasure or your life is different, but for work, $20 a month. I mean, to do the math and how many like minutes or hours are you saving, and then it's a simple calculation.
It's just like, for example, in a way I see it. You before you had books and you were looking for something, you opened the book to see the reference and see how it works. Then you have internet where you could just go and look for the documentation there. Then you have specialization pages like Stack Overflow where people are asking questions and you go look for them there. And now AI, it's like, okay, you take one of these, you always can go back to the other. It's less efficient, but it's always there.
But, right, so it seems like we are doing a GitHub Copilot show, and I think you have 3 more tools you want to share. Go ahead, man.
The next one is this is the order in which they appeared. ChatGPT. I mean, we've shared, and I guess that this was the one that broke the internet. We would say it like this, that it made suddenly AI aware to the rest of the world. The one that said, "Hey guys, we're producing AI too fast, too quickly, and you should stop working on AI for 6 months." I think this was said by Mr. X himself and other people that were trying to slow down the development of AI. And in any case, ChatGPT was the one that came in. It broke everything, and it made you question. For once, people were saying, "Hey, is this going to take our jobs or not?" The first mention that we had was back in December 8th, 2022.
So in our Slack channel, right?
In our Slack channel. Oh, yeah. Remember, this is in the internal Slack channel. The first person that mentioned it was back then, and I think they were saying, "Hey, this thing is coming out." It was back then, I think, ChatGPT 3, and they were discussing precisely regarding on the uses and such. And it was, I mean, over a year and a half after. And this one, I started trying it out. We had even bigger discussions about it. It was not just like, "Oh, it's autocomplete." It's not like, "Oh, someone," I think they mentioned, "I asked it to do this piece of code, and here was the answer," and I'm really surprised about what I got. I don't remember your opinion regarding ChatGPT when it came out. What was it?
Definitely, I think we all tried it at some point, but for me, it quickly died down because I don't know. I mean, maybe it's a ChatGPT issue, but the issue in general where I like to fact check, or I'm old, I don't know, but it's like I don't fully trust facts when they come from the AI. Like code is different because code I understand, right? Code I can read the JavaScript, I can read the HTML, and I know if it's wrong, I can fix it. But with facts, if I ask it, okay, who was the first to win the World Series in whatever, I have to trust it, and I don't like that. I like to go to Google or whatever search engine that to go and see the different results. Okay, there's 3 websites, one from Wikipedia, one from whatever baseball stats, and I give me the cross check I need. With ChatGPT, I don't have that.
And it was the first time that I saw people that I worked with learn from ChatGPT. They used it to learn, which it can be a little bit dangerous, but I think it's nice. I've done it myself. When I heard that this was one of the use cases that was used, it's like, okay, let me try that. I'm actually paying for a license of ChatGPT. I'm using it not only for work, but I'm also using it.
How much is it?
I think it's 20 something.
20 something. Okay.
I think it's a little bit too expensive. And I use it less for work, always trying to make sure that what I'm sharing is not sensitive. That's a very important thing.
Confidentiality.
Yes, confidentiality. I usually change information regarding this. And I use it more for personal stuff. I mean, for the things that I do on my own, not necessarily coding, but anyhow. Someone mentioned, "Hey, I'm learning through it." It's like, okay, that sounds interesting. And I started asking it like, okay, give me information regarding this topic. Tell me a little bit about this, about that. And for me, it ended up working more as an inspiration than as a source of truth. It's like I asked it for a couple of topics that I was working on. It's like, okay, could you explain this to me? The explanation was nice, and it served as a starting point for where to pull, the string. I don't remember right now the specific topic. It was something that I hadn't worked with in the beginning, and I was like, okay, how do you do this? And I said, okay, let's start with chat. Put it in, it's like, explain this to me. And it gave me an explanation. Okay, this is interesting. And I started grabbing the keywords and I started looking for them outside that context. And it helped me get started. So that's the main cases that I have. I sometimes ask him to complete certain or do certain more complex things or just to help me out get started or get inspiration. You don't use it that much?
Not really. I mean, the whole prompting. No, I mean, I think I'm done with. Like, I'm done. It's sufficient for me. Like
no prompting.
No. Copilot is sufficient for me for work and for my personal stuff. Again, I don't really like it. So for today's podcast, I was also taking a look again at Bard, the Google's version of AI and chat, and I like it a little bit more because when you search there for facts, it will give you search results as well. Like when you search for something, it will give you the answer, the fact answer, but you can actually, there's a button there that says cross-reference with Google search, and then you can actually see links to the Google search, and then you can compare. And what I got in the Google search was actually what Bard was giving me, which is, again, like answer from websites, right? But I liked it because I knew the source. I knew that this was taken from that website, and I trust the source.
And this is where the next one, I mean, although ChatGPT is the biggest one, I think it's the one that, in a way, has had less impact in our work. And the one that I use more is precisely one that gives that function that he says, Bard can do this, but I've using, someone shared, and let me see what it was, in May 8th of 2023 this year. So it was like, 5 months or 4 months after the ChatGPT, phind.io, which is a search engine that you use for code. I'm sure that there are more like this one. It uses the ChatGPT engine in the background. But what I love about it is that it gives me the best of both worlds. It gives me the ChatGPT related answer. I can keep on prompting it. And it gives me a series of links or where I can look about the answer. It's Stack Overflow, Mozilla, the documentations, and all this kind of
whatever it is, right? Whatever is the source of the
exactly.
information. Mm-hmm.
And as you say, I think that brings a lot of value. It's like, okay, this is the quick answer, but I can see where this comes from, and I can jump and see. Because sometimes it's not. One of the things that they were saying about Copilot is that it gave you the answers to the best scored answer, but it wasn't maybe not necessarily the newest one or the best
correct one.
Exactly.
It's just the most voted one. Yeah, definitely.
So for me, these kind of tools, if it's not integrated in the best way is to have it integrated in your IDE to work on it, like Visual Studio Code, and that's the best. And the second best, if you look outside, I wouldn't love something that gives you context, that you look for something and it tells you, hey, this is where I found the information.
So, Chuch, will we as front-end software engineers get out of work or get kicked out because of AI?
I don't want to say yes or no, because this is something that if I say, this is the kind of things that you say, no, never, and then I'm out of a job next month.
Shit, no. But I think it would be a safe bet to say that in the next maybe 2-3 years, we are more or less safe, right? I mean, I wouldn't say 10 because I don't know, but at the current state, there's no way you can hand over everything you're doing in your day-to-day to an AI.
Yes, that is true. Unfortunately, and this is something that I discussed with a friend, you know it, I know it, a lot of developers know it, but the bosses of the developers, do they know it? The ones taking the decisions, do they know it? And there are people thinking that right now these kind of things can substitute when it's not true. This tools, at least in my experience, they complement us. They make
for some jobs, like for front-end, it surely complements. For others, surely, I mean, if you had somebody, I don't know, moving Excel rows or somebody doing, I don't know, very manual labor, probably that's going away. But for us, where we do like complex integrations with systems, APIs, things that have no documentation you're creating from scratch, I doubt that they can do that in the near future.
And basically, this is something that you mentioned a little bit back, like when you have several tabs open, you ask the chat, it's aware of the context. Some of the work that we do, it has to be context aware, not only about the work that we're doing, but where we're doing it, who the client is, what the real needs are, and this kind of thing. So for short, I think it's going to change the way that work. It's going to complement us. And the important thing is that quality work is not going to be that easily substituted for now, I think. So let's see what the future comes.
Talking about the future, what would you like to see in AI? Like moving on, now we have answers, facts, we have free writing. You can ask it, okay, give me a form, and they will give you the form in HTML. But what else would you like to see?
One of the things that I say is, I think, since in the end it's based on patterns, and if you teach it or it knows good patterns, quality assurance. And I'm not saying that it's going to take the jobs of
Careful
our
now.
QA.
Careful now.
No.
A full community of QAs.
No. That's not what I said. What I mean with this is that it will help. For example, I would right now, depending on how much resources that you have and how much you want to emphasize on quality. We at least Cognizant Center, we do have quality gates and regular reviews and maybe even more. But depending on the resources that you have, you can do one or the other or both or whatever. And I think that this would be just an additional layer in which you can tell it, okay, let's review the code quickly and give me any before you're. It wouldn't be the peer review, but it would be before I push this code, please review it and give me tips, and then I can push a reviewed code.
I mean, we do have things like Sonar that checks the code, but better. I mean, I guess you mean like better stuff. Yeah, yes. I get it.
That would be one. And you, what? Is there anything?
I want not to work. No, just kidding. In general, I think just better results, better autocomplete, better knowing before I want to sell something, just give it to me, and just I guess in time having to less and less fact check or having less and less to rewrite, because usually when I get something like a big chunk of code, it's almost never what I want. When it's autocomplete, yes, tap, and I correct. But it's when I ask it like a whole function, I write a comment and say, write me a function that will calculate this thing based on that, will return an array. It's never what I would have like written manually. So I want in the future better results. Just to get this boring stuff, things that you need my brain to just do it faster, be more productive in other architecture or how you review stuff.
One thing that I think is that maybe languages will evolve as well. Okay. We had assembly code in the beginning, which is basically very close to machine code. And then we had higher level languages that was more based on how we think. And then it transformed it to machine code and such. And we have even natural languages that are tried to be like the way that you speak. And maybe that would be the next evolution where you can actually write the algorithms and explain what you need to do. And then it would write down.
Like Iron Man, like Jarvis, whatever, Alexas and all those things, but more on steroids, right?
I don't think that this would be useful in like a silver bullet. This wouldn't be something that can be used in every single context. But I think that there's certain things that can get programmed this way that would benefit from a natural language. Maybe, depending on what you want. But I think...
But more or less we're doing it, right? I mean, more or less, sure, and JavaScript is not like a language, but then on the prompt on the chat, you already tell it, hey, write me a function that will calculate the age based on whatever, no? So this is very, very like natural-like, and it will convert it to if-thens, for eaches, and array maps.
If I ever create this language, it would be called the black box.
Black box. Okay, nobody knows how to do it. How does it work? But you get a lot of money.
Exactly.
The black box. Anything else you'd like to see when it comes to future AI for coding? Well,
code that it gives you code optimization, but it's very similar to the quality assurance. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
For definitely as part of the quality code unit testing. I hate unit testing, as I said, but I'm not completely against it. And if I can have an AI to do the unit testing by writing in a natural language, maybe the expectations of the data or whatever, that would be nice.
But what about the other way around? I'm a big fan of TDD, test-driven development, and I sometimes do the unit test or even like the end-to-end first. Right? I read the end-to-end and then I start coding because I know that whenever I save, I will get green or red. But maybe what about if you write the end-to-end, quite comprehensive, and then magically they will write the code. Of course, the code will be ugly and obscure, but maybe in the future it's going to be clean code. I don't know.
Here we have an idea. Let's create black box, the one where you write unit testing driven development, and you just write the unit test and it creates the code for you.
Wow. Maybe.
We could call it the purple box.
Alrighty. What else is here? We're almost out of time.
Well, I guess we can close down with how we use, just as a summary, how we use these tools in every day and general thoughts.
Yeah, I think every day for me, I already mentioned. So it's VS Code, right, with the 3 main plugins. And more and more, I'm using like the chat more and more every day. I wasn't so much in the past few months, but now, because I see real results and good results, I'm starting to use it more and more rather than just Googling, just, be aware of my context. Because usually when you go to Google, you got to also give it the context, like, okay, paste the error message that you have or paste the code that you have in like thinking that maybe you will get documentation and you get source code from GitHub. But now with the GitHub chat, it already knows my context. So I'm a little bit faster with the chat than Googling.
Well, in my case, it's very similar to yours. My two use cases are Copilot, definitely. I think it makes my life a little bit easier. And the other one is the one that I mentioned, search, let's say, code-driven search engines, if we could call it like that, in which you ask a question, you put up a question, or it gives you the information back, the answer, but it also gives you context so that you can pull the string from there. And those would be the two. I don't think you need much more. I think Copilot, and they're not paying us. They're not, this is not
sponsored. Not sponsored. But if you want sponsors, talk to us. Talk to us.
But yeah, I think that it's more than enough. I guess most of the things that I've done, I can do it with Copilot and be happy about that. So what do we want to ask our listeners?
Again, tips and tricks. I think I'm eager to listen to what they have done in the past or what you guys are using nowadays. If maybe it's a new tool, or maybe how you use the tools. Maybe that's something we don't know about. Surely new features come up every day. So I would like to know how you guys use AI.
Please share. Sharing is caring.
Alrighty, Chucho. Then thank you so much for joining today.
Oh, thank you, Ricardo. As always, it's a pleasure.
It is. And for you guys, see you in the next Frontend Coffee Break.
Bye.